word, I have a story for you about a princess who, no matter what she said, her father said, if the princess says it, it must be true. Now, this king, he loved his daughter, and he had lost his wife when she was born. And so he only had the one child. He raised her to be the next ruler of his kingdom. Oh, his advisor said, "You are spoiling that child." And it's true that with another kid, telling them that no matter what they said, if the princess says it, it must be true, would be a recipe for a disaster. Now, I'm not saying there weren't probably occasional, the princess gets to eat candy all day days, or the princess's bedtime is much later than originally posited. But by the time she was a young teenager, she'd begun to notice that people relied on her. If the princess said it, it must be true. And in addition to being a graceful, well educated, musical princess who had a great affinity for plants, she had the capability of becoming wise. And soon, people, no matter what their age, would go to her with disputes or problems, and always, however she ruled, they would say, well, if the princess says it, it must be true. And she really was very wise. Now, her father was getting on in years, and he said to her, "Oh, my daughter, our people need to know that you will have someone by your side to rule. And I'm afraid I am nearing the end of my life. I would like to be able to tell my people that you will accept a suitor." Accept a suitor? Father, you have trained me to rule, and at the moment I don't have anyone I would accept as a suitor. Well, they went back and forth until they came up with a plan. The king said, "You may set any condition that isn't impossible. And if you say it, it must be so." Very well. Now, this particular princess, I told you, she had an affinity for plants. So whenever she needed to think or get away from it all, she would go out into her garden and dig around the roses. And she came up with an idea. She went back to her father and she said, "Here is my decree. I will marry any man who can bring me a blue rose." "I said it couldn't be impossible," said the king. But the daughter stood firm. "It may be highly improbable, but I do not think it's impossible." Well, the word went out far and wide, and soon there was a suitor from the next kingdom over but one. Now, this man, he looked at the kingdom that the princess had and he thought, "Oh, I know how to get that. I will invade my neighbors to the north. They have all kinds of jewels. I have heard that they have a huge blue diamond, and I will get that carved in the shape of a rose, and I will bring it to the princess, and she will marry me." And that's just what he did. He had his army invade. He had the jewel carved in the shape of a rose. He strode into the throne room and presented the princess with this beautiful diamond and said, "When is our wedding day?" And the princess took that beautiful jewel, but she did not see a blue rose. She saw a man who would not think twice about getting what he wanted with violence, who had a hard and gem like heart. She said, "This is not a blue rose. This is but a jewel, a bauble. What need have I of that? My treasury is overflowing." And she sent him away. Well, she thought that might be the end of it, but no. Soon there was another suitor, and he arrived, and, well, Truth be told, he was being pushed into the throne room by his mother and father from a kingdom to the south. Are you here to propose? Said the princess. Yes. Now, this suitor was an artist, and he had spent all of the intervening weeks making a beautiful, delicate ceramic rose. So frail, so fragile, so blue. Look at it, princess. It is one of my life's most beautiful works. The princess took the fragile item carefully. I do not see a blue rose. She saw a man whose whole heart, whose whole love was given to his art, who had such a fragile blue rose. And she knew that that's what his love would be like as well. She gave it back to him and said, "This is not a blue rose." And her people said, "And if the princess says it, it must be so." And she sent him packing. Well, she was able to rule and to take care of her father, who was ailing, for quite a long time after that. But soon, in the very next kingdom, another prince was plotting. He said, "I know what to do. It's the simplest thing in the world. I will take a white rose and dip it in blue ink and have it suck it up and become blue." And that's just what he did. He brought it to the princess, and she took it. And just as she took it, a bee flew in the window and landed on that blue rose. But the minute it touched the blue rose, that bee dropped down dead to the floor. "A poison rose? You would give me a poison rose? This is not a blue rose. This is an act of treachery." Well, the prince, who had in mind knocking off the princess had he been able to win her hand, scuttled out of there as her people stood and said, "If the princess says it, it must be so." Well, in the way of fairy tales, her father did die, and the princess ascended to the throne and ruled well, but it was hard and it was lonely. And many, many evenings she could be found out in her rose garden digging and trimming. And one night she heard someone singing just over the wall. "Blue moon, I saw you standing alone." Oh, she loved that song. She ran over to the wall. She peeked over, and there was a young man whose shirt was tied around his waist, who in the moonlight was taking such delicate care of the climbing roses from the garden below. And when he began to sing again, "You knew just what I was there for," she joined in. "You heard me saying a prayer for someone I really could care for." "Oh, oh, your majesty, princess, I'm so sorry. I hope I haven't disturbed you." "Not at all. Thank you for taking such good care of my roses. It was fun to sing with someone." "Well," said the young man, putting his shirt on, "I have more songs if you would like them. Come tomorrow with another blue song." The next night he sang, "Am I blue?" And she joined in, "You'd be too." And the next night it was, "Blue roses for a blue lady." And by the time they got to Mood Indigo, the princess realized that this was the man she wanted to marry. But she had set a highly improbable task. The gardener said, "Lady, your highness, you know that I love you. I would do anything, but I don't know how to give you a blue rose." "I do," said the princess, "but you must trust me. Come to the throne, to the court at the throne tomorrow just before sunset, and bring that rose right there." "But your highness—" "Don't your highness me. Trust me." Well, she called together all of her counselors and all of the public that could fit in the courtroom, and she sat on her throne and she waited. And just before sunset, that poor gardener, trembling with a rose in his hand that did not look blue to him, entered in and said, "I ask for the hand of the princess in marriage." Well, just like that, whispers went around the side of the room. "That's not a blue rose, that one's white. What she did to the other princess, what is she going to do to this gardener?" But the princess held out her hand and took the white rose that he was holding. She held it high in the air and said, "This is a blue rose." And with that, she placed it in the shaft of light from the setting sun coming through the stained glass, turning it blue. And a chorus of voices said, "If the princess says it, it must be so." Thank you. Thank you very much.